Ever wondered what painting with plastic wrap would look like? Today I'm going to be painting an abstract acrylic painting with this unique tool. I'll be using a large 40 by 50 centimeter canvas, some plastic wrap. It doesn't matter what kind, any from your kitchen will be fine. For colours, I'm going to be using cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, titanium white, prussian blue, pthalo blue and pthalo green. I also have a flat spatula and a palette knife. Any kind will be just fine. A jar of water and a spray bottle. Usually I start off by spraying my canvas, but considering how big this canvas is, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to take my jar and I'm going to pour it onto the canvas and just kind of smush it around and move it around with my hands. You can use a brush, but honestly, your hands work just as well. So I opted for my hands. Feel free to use a brush if you'd like. And I'm just going to be wetting the entire surface just so that the canvas is a bit more forgiving when we put the paint onto it. I really like to work always first with a wet surface, as I find it just allows you a little bit more time to work with your paints versus working straight on a dry canvas. The acrylics dry really fast and you can end up with a lot of harsh lines, which I don't particularly like. So I like to always make sure that my surface is wet before beginning. Once your canvas is wet, you're going to grab any blue. I went for the cerulean first, and I'm just going to start by placing down some colour. I had this envision of where I wanted to create a abstract version of an ocean and perhaps like some clouds. So I went for a lot of blues and one green as well in my painting, just so that I can get more of that sea green colour. And I'm just kind of at this point creating the cloud part, I guess you can say. So there's really no rhyme or rhythm to what I'm doing because the plastic wrap is going to be going on top. So you can't really predict what it's going to look like. So I'm taking some of the ultramarine and some of the cerulean and I'm just kind of placing it around and dotting it in the canvas. I'm kind of doing these wavy shapes up and down, and then also with my white I'm going to be placing it in between those colours just so that we get a nice transition and a more sky effect overall once the plastic wrap goes on top of it. The bottom part of my canvas had dried a bit. You can see some dry patches at the bottom there. So I am just going around and spraying again over my canvas, as I really want this to maintain its wetness and I don't want it to be dry as I'm doing this. So now grabbing the colours that I had in mind for my ocean, which is pthalo blue, prussian blue and the pthalo green, I'm going to be placing these in more of a horizontal lines so that I can kind of get the effect of the ocean and how it sits below the sky. So just play around and have fun, really enjoy this. This is very much just playing and enjoying the process, and I really felt like I was back at school and just having fun in an art lesson. So I highly recommend giving this a try because it is really a lot of fun to paint in this way where you can't really plan too much and you have to let go and just really get into the creativity rather than all of the extra thinking that a lot of us do when creating or painting. So taking my white as well, I'm doing the same thing as the sky and went in between all those colours. And then I wanted to mix a green, so I took some ultramarine and primary yellow and I've mixed that. And with my palette knife, I'm going to be just placing that at the borders and corners of the bottom part of the canvas. I think I wanted to add like this greenery as if you can see some maybe a cliff. Once that's done, grab your plastic wrap and we're going to start now onto the most fun part of the painting. So slowly unrolling the plastic wrap and trying to keep it as flat as possible, I'm going to be placing it on the top half of the canvas. So I've separated the part where the clouds are and where the part where the sea is going to be. And I'm going to be, once that's placed down on the top half, I'm just sticking it down and then removing the roll. And I'm doing the same thing on the bottom half, making sure the plastic wrap is nice and placed down firmly, and then ripping off the rest of the plastic wrap roll. Initially, I started with my hands by just kind of pushing down and kind of spreading with my fingers, trying to move the paint around. But I did end up going for the flat spatula and using it at an angle. I started moving the paint around in every direction as I wanted this to look very abstract and not really have a particular look. So I was just kind of slowly and with a light hand dragging my flat spatula all around the sky part of the painting until I was kind of happy with how it looked and felt that enough of the colours have been mixed together. Now for the sea ocean part, I'm going to be pushing down the paint in the same horizontal direction that I did when I was placing down the paint, and I'm going to be moving my hands, even using the spatula. Just really enjoy this part because there's no wrong that you can do. So just have fun and let go at this point, because it is really just immerse yourself in the experience. It felt really nice. I actually really liked this part. It was very sensory, and I just kind of went back and forth between my hands and the flat spatula so that I could kind of just see what was being created underneath. And obviously, because the plastic wrap is see-through, you can actually get an understanding of what it's going to look like when you remove the plastic wrap. This is just a really fun way to create a piece without too much stress or pressure, and I absolutely love being able to create something that you love or something that brings you joy, and in the process of making it, it didn't actually cause you unnecessary amounts of stress. At this point, I was happy and ready to remove the plastic wrap. So taking off the top half, I wanted to pull it off instead of dragging it, as I wanted to keep the pattern that I had underneath. So this was going to allow me to see all of the texture and the marks from the plastic wrap without actually changing anything once I removed it. So that was the final result, and I was so impressed with it and really loved the way that it turned out. Moving on to the bottom half, I wanted more of a pulled effect. So very slowly, keeping my hand at the same level as the canvas, I wanted to very slowly and gradually slide it off by pulling at an angle. Now it moved a little bit from the top half, but that was fine, and I just kind of wanted to pull it off and see the effect that it gave. And honestly, I was so impressed with how this turned out, and I loved the effect, and I think it turned out exactly the way I wanted. Now you could just stop there because the painting in itself is beautiful, but obviously I love adding a floral touch even to abstract pieces of work. So I wanted to add some white. I didn't want to go in with any pink or oranges. I really wanted the standalone color to be the blues. So I wanted to go on top whilst the canvas was still wet, and to use my palette knife and to add some textures and marks and some shapes to give off the impression of some flowers. There's really no wrong or right way to do this. It is simply just taking your canvas and your palette knife and just placing down the color, moving your brush sometimes in a waving motion, sometimes kind of patting it down or dragging it across, and you'll get all these different kind of marks that can look really beautiful. Sometimes I'm using the very tip point of my palette knife as well, so I get more of these little petals or leaves, or the impression of them at least. And so I just kind of went with the flow and put the color down as I saw fit. So depending where you want the color to go, just have fun and enjoy, and really just put it down wherever you want. So you can go even higher up. You could probably go all the way up to the sky if you wanted to. You could stay quite low. You could leave it as it is. It's really up to you. I just definitely wanted to have a small amount because I wanted the most focal point of the painting to be the water. I'm also going over with my flat spatula and using the corner to just kind of indent into the painting a little bit more and adding some marks and lines. Flat spatulas are great for this because they have a really thin line, so you can kind of just go on top without grabbing any paint, as the paint on the canvas is already wet, and you can go over and create these lines, and this really gives off a beautiful impression of some grass or some really tall pieces of stems that are coming out. And this adds some depth to your painting because it gives off the impression that the flowers are closer to you, because the sticks and leaves and stems and florals are all quite bigger and larger in size. So it just makes the painting slightly more interesting to look at once it's complete. This is the final look, and honestly, I am blown away by how easy and beautiful this turned out. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know if you've tried it, what was your end results. Please let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more acrylic videos like this, and I'll see you in the next video.